Welcome to RAD, Real Adventure Discovery. This is adventure. Sun is up and shining. It's the final day. I'm all packed up this morning and probably have about 12 miles, maybe 12 or 13 miles back to the lodge. It's a little bit of a climb to get to the high point, and then there's a long descent. Sometimes on a long hike, the downhill is harder than the uphill. Just it's harder on your legs and your muscles, and your feet too. But the hardest part of the morning is putting the pack back on and getting started. So here we go. Well, first thing in the morning, it's a climb. See the rocky pathway here, and in the distance you can see some wood posts sticking up, the markers up to the top of that ridge. So eventually I may have 1.5 miles or 2 miles to get to that peak, and then it'll be a long stretch around the northeast side and down around towards I want to say Newton Creek, I think it's called, and then towards the meadows. Well, crossing that north to northeast side of the ridge, this is the probably the closest point I'll be to the summit there. You can still see the snow and ice on the backside, on the north side there. It's a glacier, so pretty much year round it'll be like that. I've still got to go across these ridges here before I can start to break and work my way down around. There'll be some ice likely that I'll have to cross, and some of these ridges will still have ice. Maybe not too much, maybe, I don't know, 30, 40 feet that you have to cross, depending on the year. Give you a 360 view here. There's the sun coming up in the east. Eastern Oregon. Looking north into Washington there. And you can see Adams, Rainier in the distance in the back. Can't see Mount St. Helens from here. It's a little bit over there, over that way. But getting it done this morning. Next ridge. And then I got like a 5 or 6 mile stretch of downhill. Some years the ice crossing is a lot wider than this, but it's less than 15 feet to cross. And there's even enough soil where people have placed rocks to make sure you don't slip. But so still got to be careful. You don't want to tumble down the rocks there, but not a bad crossing at all. Still coming across this ridge along the backside on the northeast. You can see the big cairns here. You'll see them helping you guide your way. Sometimes, depending on the time of the year, if there's heavy snow, you might see more than one, because one might have been covered up with snow and there'll be one at a lower level, but they help guide you across. Just know that if you're here in the summer and the temperatures are going to be hot during the day, this is like crossing Mordor, and it's like dry, rocky, and it can get really hot. Big difference from the southwest side of the mountain where you have all the trees and the shade. So if you have to cross this side, you want to try to do that early in the morning, especially if the temperatures are going to be really hot. Almost made it to the ridge here. You can see the green shrubbery up ahead. crossing over little ice area and some rocks, and this last ridge you see right here, you'll see some trails drop down into this canyon. And some people take a few shortcuts on the lower side or not, but you'll see it can be deceiving because there's a trail that goes up to the summit there. Really nice view, massive canyon. The trail for Timberline Trail, you want to follow it to the left around, and it loops around and down. So normally you stay along the mountain, and as we'll see later, there's another example of that at Newton Creek down below. So I decided to climb that summit, and as you can see, there's a really massive basin over here at the top of the summit. There used to be a trail here, and I don't know if people still try to climb it. It would be very dangerous. I don't even attempt it. But we'll end up winding around this canyon, around these hills to the east side. You can see in the distance there, once again, there's Mount Jefferson, which is on the south side. The lodge is around the other side of the mountain that way. And I'll be heading back that way. At the top of the summit here, you'll see there's a meadow. You can't camp up here in the meadow. Any of the areas along the Timberline Trail, you're not supposed to camp in the meadows. So at the peak here you see a meadow. It's really nice. It looks real welcoming, but it's prohibited to camp there. So I went to that right trail up to the summit. Now I'm going to head back up to the peak here, and then it's downhill for quite a ways until I come to the meadows around the east side. So I made it back up to the peak here. I came across the ridge from over there, and this is that summit. So I'm going to be heading this way downhill. It winds its way around. It does kind of look like you're heading in the wrong direction when you're going down kind of to the north, but it does wind it and wrap its way around. In the distance, you see the mountains there. That's actually the other side of the Columbia Gorge. I'm on the lower side of that summit. It goes out up above. You can see the snow melt still coming down. I believe that forms what is Newton Creek down below. But I'll be winding my way to the left around the hills, and down in a lower elevation you drop down across that creek and come back up the other side. Back into the wooded area. Finally got to see some trees again. Still heading downhill, but the trees are really nice to get some shade. But it's a really nice day. Temperatures aren't too high. High 60s, maybe low 70s. You can see the pathway has worn itself down about a foot below the ground level. I'm on the east side now, or coming around to the east side of the mountain. And the Pacific Crest Trail coming up from Mexico all the way to Canada it used to loop around the east side of Mount Hood, but the ice and the snow, it remains for so long in the season that they changed it to the west side. So now the Pacific Crest Trail sticks with the Timberline Trail, and then it goes around to the north side, and then they split off. But I'm sure many of PCT hikers have walking this path all the way on their way to Canada. Here at a junction, there's a few camp spots here, and Timberline Trail winds its way down to the creek. I think there's a straighter shot that way, but it's pretty steep. I'm just going to go ahead and stick with the Timberline Trail and wind my way back down. Here's an example of a fallen tree that is not going to be moved very easy. So the path will adjust to get around. You reach the bottom towards the creek, you'll see a few guides for the pathway here. You see some tree branches stuck in the ground, but that summit up there is where I was earlier. I wound all the way around to here. Gonna cross over. I'll have to climb back up this ridge to get back across to the meadows. There's another ski resort up here, and I'll be crossing through some meadows and underneath some ski lifts. So leaving Newton Creek, little rough climb right here to get back on the trail. It leads up above. You can see Newton Creek winds all the way down to Highway 35, which comes up out of Hood River. So now gonna head around the east side towards the meadows and the ski resorts. After you come up the ridge out of Newton Creek, you cross the small creek here, and then the trail goes up to the right. You'll see they dropped some logs and left them there just to let you know that's not the route. Pick it up to the right here. Now here's a little intersection. On my left, you see a sign. It's not well placed. It says Timberline Trail this way, but it's really turns to the right. Newton Creek is a long descent. You can take that way, but you'd be going downhill a long ways. So we got to loop back around this way, around the ridge to the other side. Crossed a few ridges, almost to the meadows. Come up on another fallen tree. Sometimes the broken branches make good handles. Sometimes the ones you don't see can scratch your leg, like I just did. See the east side of the mountain and the big ridge here. What you also see though is a lot of trees. There's another creek here I'm dropping down to after Newton Creek. I'll work our way back up that ridge into the meadows and the ski resort area. There's a few ridges you have to kind of work your way down and wind your way back up before you get back around to the lodge. I know the last one is kind of sandy as you're climbing uphill at the end of the hike, so it can feel a little bit overwhelming when you're tired. There's the view from the east side. We're working my way down this canyon. There's a little waterfall right here along the way. One of the spots where you can get some water. Maybe not every time you pass by, different times of year, but most of the time, every time I've come by in September, I've seen water. Another view here, waterfall coming out of the mountain. Working our way up the next ridge, almost to the meadows. Each time you think you're almost to the next meadow, there's another ridge to climb. So, almost there. So, I made it around to the ski lifts. Be crossing the meadow now. You can see the ski lifts here. They're idle right now. But it's a nice sunny day, kind of warm. But as you dip into the canyons behind the trees, it cools down really nice. You can see the top of the lifts there up at the top of the ridge. Trail was winding its way down through the meadows here to pass the second ski resort area. You'll hear waterfalls. Sometimes they're running under the pathway, flowing down the hill. But I know there'll be another creek to cross and a steep sandy ridge to go back up before we get to the lodge. Here's another ski resort. This is South Canyon. You see the Mount Hood up above, the peak. We're still crossing the meadows. I'm almost to the last creek I'll have to cross before the sandy ridge climb to the lodge. It's getting closer. But I'm getting more tired too. So I'm sure it'll be a tough climb. I'm heading across the meadows still. Past the marker, 4 miles to Timberline Lodge. So, getting closer to the end of the trail. My energy level is dropping. Has to be expected, but I keep pushing on. I'm almost there. Just crossed the White River. See coming off the other end of the mountain here. Just about to make the last push up for the lodge. Got about 2 miles left. Short break and a hydration pack and I'll be ready to go. So I'm here at the intersect before getting back to the Timberline Lodge. And this is where the PCT hikers coming from Mexico heading up to Canada, this is where they intersect with the Timberline Trail. They're probably about 1.5 miles from the lodge, just around the ridge, a little ways away. There's Mount Hood in the background. We're working our way back up. And it's a little deceiving. There's a big ridge. So you have to climb up and around and drop back into the lodge. So we're not quite there yet, but you get a glimpse of it. We're close. On the last stretch. Making it up that last climb before dropping down to the lodge. As I mentioned, it is a little deceiving because you turn right away from the lodge and climb up to get around and drop down to the lodge. But just up ahead. That looks like a muddy creek right there. Just finished the Timberline Trail hike. I just got back to the lodge here. And here's the pathway, the beginning. All done. Left Thursday afternoon just after 3, and it's Saturday afternoon just after 3:30. So just over 2 days. Camped out 2 nights and hiked during 3 days, and made it back around. Whew. It's definitely a hike that will drain your will and your spirit at times, but you have to put one foot in front of the other, just like in life. Keep taking steps forward and you'll get to where you're trying to get to. Signing off.